So as you can see from the subject, what's in your wallet? I think everybody knows that advertising campaign. And what we're talking about today is what's in your way. And the story behind this is actually the sales DNA assessment that I took in 2007 after a year of training intensely, working full-time for most of that as a sales training development guy. And I took this assessment, and when I got the results, I threw them in a drawer, told my boss that they weren't accurate because, I was confused. I didn't know if I was the old Mike Shannon sales guy, the newly trained sales guy, or the sales trainer. And so I threw it in the drawer and said it wasn't true. And about 5 months later, I had a validation experience that proved to me that, in fact, it was at least partially true. I put on a different pair of glasses and reread the report, and it's like, oh my gosh, this thing so figured me out. And one of the findings that I couldn't believe, and this is a group, there's really basically 3 areas that come out of this assessment, and the purpose of this is to help you understand what's getting in the way of your staff. And so, John, if you be kind enough to make just note in the questions thing as I go through this, something that you think may have actually impacted your staff or people you've worked with, or possibly even yourself. I will tell you that the accuracy of this thing is it's so much more accurate than people's gut judgment. And it's been around for 30 years, started in 1990, close to 2 million people have been through it. And it's been validated a number of times. And is it 100% accurate? Of course not. No assessment is. But I just believe so strongly in the validity of this thing and the ability to help people. I would tell you point blank, I would not be in this business if I had not gone through this and accepted the findings as truth. And it took me a while to get there, as I told you. So looks like Janice is joining us. So good morning. Thank you both for coming in today. So this tool, it's the first step of my development program. And we use it 2 ways. We use it as a development tool, and we use it as a recruiting tool. And as a recruiting tool, we actually screen candidates and are looking for levels of sales DNA, is the title, that exceed a certain amount before we'll consider them for hire. And again, this thing has been validated over the years, and the data says that if you hire somebody who's recommended by this thing in recruiting, which we're not really going to talk about today beyond here, but if you hire a recommended person, there's a 90% probability that they'll still be with you in the top half of your producers a year later. If you hire somebody that's in the not recommended category, the statistical data is that 3/4 of the time, 75% of those people are actually gone within 6 months. And founder of this company, a guy named Dave Curlin, he actually went against his own assessment one time, and the guy lasted 4 months, and they ended up firing him because he said this thing is just that guy was just couldn't miss, quote unquote couldn't miss. And but just because you have this knowledge, if you use it for recruiting, doesn't mean you shouldn't be using it in their development. And that's really what we're about today. It's developing the staff and figuring out what's preventing them from being more effective. So there's 3 primary areas: the will to sell. How strong is your desire and commitment for success in sales? What's your outlook? Do you take responsibility? And how motivated are you? And so I'll be touching on a little bit of that stuff today. Also, there's skills and there's sales DNA. So those are the big 3 areas. So I don't have time to to go through the whole thing, but when we talk about responsibility, that's the 4th or the 3rd of those findings. Fourth, desire, commitment, outlook, responsibility, and then motivation. There's 5 that are all grouped under the strengths category. When we talk about taking responsibility for their sales results, it's both good and bad. And for a producer, that's pretty much the story. And you both run marketing organizations, I would call it. So I got a whole class on taking responsibility, and I dig into excuse making and all that sort of stuff. But one of the things I like to share with people is this, and this is a 25-year-old book at this point, the Oz Principles, the line of decision. And it's a language to speak with your team. So if they're living above the line, they're taking responsibility for the results. If they're below their line, what we're hearing are excuses and denying, placing blame on other people. So clearly, victims, the victim mentality, reasons why stuff doesn't happen is what you hear below the line. And above the line, of course, we get results, and that's where victors live. So if you are using this language, so John, you put in a note there, but I'm not going to take the time to read it. Thank you. I'll get to it at some point if I have time. When you hear somebody make an excuse, you say, hey, Ellen, is that above or below the line? It's real simple. And if you can take the emotional brain out of it and get them engaged in their prefrontal cortex, the logical part of their brain, that is hallelujah. Because we all have that fight or flight response, especially when a manager is criticizing us. So you don't have to, hey, that sounds like an excuse. Just, hey, Ellen, is that above or below the line? And you just kind of, oh, yeah, I guess that's really an excuse. So I love just using that to frame conversations with people when you want to hold them accountable. And I am just a strong, strong believer in the impact of having personal goals as relates to performance in virtually everything. And, I was a goal-setting fraud. First couple of years I was doing this, and then 2010, my wife I set a goal, and we achieved it by July for debt reduction. And, we never paid another penny the rest of the years. What's that tell you? But, just like in the gym that we attend, they love to put up little goals. So there was a 20K challenge. So we had 10 weeks before 2020 to do 20,000 reps of core reps. And there's, 25 different exercises you could do, and you just count them, and it's crunches and just, all kinds of different things. And every time you got to 400, you put a little star on a chart. And in their gym, you see people lining up to put their stars up after a workout. It's hysterical. And these are, middle-aged people. I hit it like December 30th, I think. So just having goals makes a huge difference to outcomes. In all the reading and research I've done, this is the best formula, specific, measurable, attainable. The most important thing to me is relevant. And that speaks to the why. Why is that an important goal for you? So when I go through this with people, and this is the motivation piece of it, I have people go through 4 different exercises. The third one's optional, which is personal financial details. And sometimes that's really eye-opening for folks. I know it sure was for me when I went through it. But the first one is just kind of questions about you. And then the second one is, okay, it's 10 years from now. Where are you living? Wherever your vacation lasts, what's your position? What sort of things are you doing? And it gets people, we think in very short windows of time. I think it's, past 90 days, we can't even conceive of it. It's the way our brains work, apparently. We set them, but, it's just set them and forget them. So you've got to have not only a plan, but actually, or a goal, I should say, but a plan and a process to follow that. And then we like to have people do some dreaming sort of goals. And, that's actually the most fun part for me. And of course, we want to make sure that there's professional goals in there. And your job as the manager is to help them achieve their goals. And, I'm a big proponent of servant leadership. You're there to help them. But in helping them achieve their goals, both professionally and personally, you're going to have a very committed, dedicated workforce, number one, and they're going to exceed expectations because they've got somebody that's got their back. And so here's some, and Always Broker is a partner broker agency, somebody that, let's see here. So, sorry, I thought I saw a question mark next to Janice as well. So strengths and, desire and commitment, those are conversations. If people score low in that, maybe it's because they just don't realize that they just don't have that strong a desire. desire is actually, I got a 10% on that after a 25-year career in sales. I'm like, this can't be true. But what I've learned is that I have an intense desire to be successful in the sales development world, but honestly, I'm not all about just selling anymore. You know, I spent 30 years doing that, and now I'm really about trying to develop the next generation, and the stupid assessment picked that up. You tell me how it figures that out, I don't know, but that was a major recognition, a realization for me. There's, I think, 10 different skill sets. Now, imagine you're coaching your producer or, you know, your marketing person, and, you know, you feel like they're not doing a great job necessarily at building relationships or qualifying opportunities when they're talking to, you know, potential, you know, clients in the case of, you know, one of you, and potential partners, you know, retail agencies, et cetera, and the other. And, you know, you've got this checklist, and it's objective. The difference between this objective management group, OMG for short, and other assessments, typically personality or behavioral style assessments, is that they put people in a sales situation and ask them how they respond. So there's no extrapolation from social situations. So now I've got this checklist, and I'm like, hey, you know, I'll pick on Lisa this time. You know, Lisa, you know, your score when it came to qualifying, it was really pretty low. Percentage of attributes is the straight numerical score. Weighted is we put more emphasis on some of these versus the other. And, you know, able to stay in the moment. Lisa, that's one of the things that, you know, you got knocked on. Let's talk about that. Let's focus on that for the next month. That's one specific skill I'd like you to work on. And, you know, when you have this kind of information that's objective and it's detailed to this extent, oh my gosh, your coaching precision becomes so much more accurate. And I know that's a, you know, a big potential area for at least one of you in conversations that we've had. So that's the strengths, the will to sell, and then the skills. And I'm not going to spend any more time on the skills, because the why are you not executing? That's going to come primarily from this area. It could be one of the strengths. It could be a skill, of course. But my guess is that the thing that's going to be most getting in their way is one of these 6 things. So the first one is record collection. Those are the beliefs that we have, and I'll dig into more detail in the first 4. That's all I have time for. Money, we actually covered that to some extent in the last session about selling higher rates. So, you know, I'll touch on it, but not going into much detail there. Getting emotional, and this happens a couple of ways, so I'll be talking on that. And then need for approval, which is a desire to be liked. To me, you know, these are the big 4. How you purchase things, OMG calls it buy cycle. You know, he would probably under records, he'd probably call it playlists, because, you know, who uses records anymore? But back in the 90s, that's all we had for the most part. I think we had cassette tapes too. But you know, buy cycle, how you will sell the way you buy. You know, I'm not spending any time on this today, again, because of limitations, but basically, if you are a price shopper, comparison shopper, take a long time to make decisions, have to talk to 5 different people to ask them what kind of refrigerator they bought. When your client, potential client, says, well, we need to get other bids, you say, okay, good, when can I get back to you? A good salesperson with a good purchasing process themselves says, you know what? I think what you're telling me, Mr. Customer, is that you really don't think I'm the right choice, because, you know, and that's on me. I mean, that's my fault that I just wasn't effective in convincing you. But, you know, if you still feel a need to go look other places, let's just talk about that. Let's just talk about why you're feeling that way. And, you know, we work through it, and maybe I have to tell you all the reasons why you may not want to buy from me. And that's a very effective concept. It's called taking people to know. I'll touch on it. But, you know, I don't want to find out that you're actually related to your current, you know, contract or insurance salesperson. I don't want to find out that your brother-in-law, you know, 2 years after I've been quoting you, and I can't understand why I'm beating their price, I'm doing everything you need, and I'm not writing the business. And then you finally say, well, my brother-in-law is my broker. I want to find that out now. And so the best way to do that is give them permission to tell you the reason why they're not going to write it with you. The last area under dealing with sales DNA, and this is all the mental conditioning stuff, is dealing with rejection. And my wife loves to tell me, I could never do what you do. You deal with rejection every day of the week, all day long. I'm like, yeah, well, she's a nurse and school nurse, and I'm like, I couldn't clean up kids vomit and stuff, and toilet people, and do all the stuff that she does. So I guess we're a good match that way. We wouldn't want to do the other jobs. So, last week I talked about selling rate in the sales class, and the big three, although all of these have something to do with your inability to sell rate or discomfort selling rate. We aggregate all these findings, we look at 21 core competencies and come up with a sales DNA number. So, there's a lot of information here, but digging deeper into the supportive beliefs thing, and this is just a quick little clip that I like to show from Who Moved My Cheese. And it's, when you change what you believe, you change what you do. I screenshot off of that thing that's playing. So there's actually 45, I think, different supportive beliefs that we look at in this assessment. And if you ever saw one of these or got a sample or something, if you're interested, just let me know. I'll shoot it to you. And one of you should have these for your staff. So if you don't, let me know. Happy to have that conversation in more detail. But you're looking for this little brain symbol, and this is something that's getting in the way of your effectiveness. And I say it like predetermines the outcome. You might as well even go if it's going to get in the way. And believe it or not, OMG has done a lot of research on fixing this stuff, and the improvement in performance, and just improving supportive beliefs can have a major impact on people's outcomes. And it is blowing like crazy out here today. We're about to get 2 to 3 inches of rain in the next 24 hours. So the lead up to that is a lot of wind. So the way this thing works, I keep waiting for my power to drop out, but then I'll catch up with you if that happens. Basically, you start out with a rule, ends up with a behavior, how you feel as a result of that, or as an outcome, and then you get the results, right? So that's the cycle. So if an underwriter or a producer say, hey, I'm too busy to handle what I've got on my desk right now, all the stuff coming in. And again, I'm usually, 80% of the time I'm working with underwriters, so forgive me for not changing this to strict producers, but, I deal with the flow that's coming in. And hey, I'm busy, I'm going home every day feeling like, boy, I just put in a long day today, no problem. So, and I'm getting some business, I'm getting some results, and I'm keeping my job. So life is good, right? If you start out with, I get a lot of flow, but a lot of it's crap. I gotta find better qualified submissions. So I need to put in some time every single day prospecting for the right types of accounts. And this is a quote from a 60-year-old underwriter 5 years ago when he did this. I was like, hey, how's it going? And he's like, this prospecting stuff, it's not as hard as I thought it would be. And so, when you hold people accountable to doing what they should do, they know they should do, but they don't do it so that they can achieve what they want to achieve, they end up thanking you in the end. And it's usually not as bad. I mean, every workout that my wife and I go into, I never feel like working out. It's a pain in the butt. There's a lot of other things I could be doing. And, but when I'm done, I used to say this, I hate walking into the gym and I love walking out. And that's still pretty much the case. We do all these workouts home now, but these workouts, when they're done, it's like, yeah, it wasn't as bad as I thought. And I feel good about it. I mean, my day is set. We usually do it in the morning, and it's that cycle. So, I don't know what our rule is. My rule is I just got to work out every day. I mean, just not a choice. So I have that rule. Some common rules in underwriters, and this is looking at a lot of different assessments, just pulled these out, but these are some of the beliefs that underwriters have that get in the way of them being effective. So you've got, by the way, the handouts are in the handout thing. So please, if you're interested in them, download them while I'm talking. So you have these to refer to, because again, I know I'm flying. So this is what it looks like. Brokers that don't give me commitments, they're ultimately going to buy with me. You know, they might think it over and all that kind of stuff, but you know, they're ultimately going to write some accounts, or maybe I have to quote it 3 or 4 years before they'll finally write it. You know, that kind of stuff. But you know, X dates come and go, and I never hear back from people because there's no commitment up front, right? But what I really want is I want to spend my time on the submissions and the brokers that, you know, and again, talking as an underwriter or on the clients, I'm going to spend my time on the clients that, you know, have given me some commitment. And so before I commit to quote, if I'm an underwriter, or before I commit to quote as a producer, I want that insured to commit to me that they're going to move the account. And, you know, if there's no reason for them to move it, no compelling reason, then I'm going to make a commitment to them. Hey, I'm going to check back in 6 months, and I'll check back in 9 months and see how you're doing. But, you know, if you're not willing to move the account for good reasons, and I'm going to help you figure those out, if you're not willing to move it, why are we quoting? You know, you don't need to look at stuff that you're not going to pay any attention to. It just makes you feel uncomfortable. So why bother? So supportive beliefs are, you know, really important. Discomfort talking about money. Last week I talked about, you know, what are the moneyisms that we grow up with, and you know, half of these are mine. I think that I grew up with. I'm one of 8 kids, and you know, that was the family environment. Not a lot of money, and so you know, it was private, something we didn't talk about, and having to reprogram that is something that is pretty important, especially in these days of higher rates and needing to sell higher rates. And you know, one of the keys to selling a higher price is selling value. And so what is the value, the differentiator in terms of your value that you bring? Because is that policy worth 10 grand or 12 grand? Insureds don't know. Every insured knows their insurance is too expensive. That's all they know. But you know, how many times do you beat somebody's price and you don't write the account? There was no compelling reason for them to change, and that's on you. So those are the different things. And if you're, you know, I can't remember if you guys all saw the presentations from last week or not, but that's, you know, go back and review that one. I've got those recordings if you're interested. So getting emotional. Now, this is the thing that happened to me, and I literally, you know, went into a sales call that I thought I was going to walk out with a $50,000 training contract, and I walked out with a small $5,000 sale, but I also walked out with a saturated T-shirt because I was so emotionally involved with what was going on or what wasn't happening in that meeting. So, you know, why does it happen? Because stuff doesn't happen. It didn't turn out the way we expected. So, you know, you're handling objections and your mind's somewhere else. The mind, people think they can multitask, but multitask means focusing on one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. Your brain can only process one thing at a time. And if you're all caught up trying to figure out how to handle objection, you're not listening to a thing that the person is saying. So that's the bad side. The good side is if the meeting's going great and everybody's getting along and they really like me and all that kind of stuff, we develop this case we call happy ears. And in both cases, you know, you're losing your objectivity. So, you know, elaborating on that, where do emotions come from? There's really only 4 sources: hormones or alcohol, drugs, alcohol, that kind of stuff, a smack to the side of the head, all the concussion stuff that's been researched here in the last decade or so, or psychological or physiological, states. So, you know, if you're claustrophobic, tight space, or fear of heights, you know, those things will cause you to feel emotional. And the last one is ourselves. And it's internal, because if you're not, you know, doing drugs or get smacked up in the side of the head or in a closet somewhere and you're feeling emotional, then that's coming from within. And supposedly, you know, up to 3/4 of our emotions are internally generated. So, you know, how do you manage that? That's, you know, that's the $1 million question. Why? Because, you know, I might be, I just haven't been trained. I haven't been taught how to deal with it. I didn't realize it was an issue getting in the way. In my case, I had no clue of this stuff. You know, for 25 years, I called myself a sales professional. I basically have 1 year's experience 25 times because I didn't learn anything. That certainly has changed in the last 15 years, or 14 years. But you know, a lot of this stuff you potentially even recognize with yourself. So you know, why you get emotional? It's because you need to perform. You need to get numbers, and you're not sure, you know, exactly how to respond to stuff. What's the impact? When they start listening to themselves, they stop listening to the client. And you know, those emotions, in my case, it was a totally soaked t-shirt, you know, but you know, if you're aware of this stuff, it can have a huge impact. So getting emotional is the last one I was going to cover in detail, in addition to the last one, second to last, need for approval. Need for approval is a desire to be liked. And I believe that one of our deepest desires as a human being is to be understood and to know that our lives have meaning and value to others. And you only have to look at all the social media stuff. I call it crap, but you know, Instagram and Snapchat, and how many likes do you get? How many friends do you have on Facebook? And all that stuff. And it's all so that we can feel good about the way others feel about us. And it's frankly a lot of nonsense, because, you know, those people, you know, would they really come and pick me up at, you know, if I get picked up for a DUI at midnight? Probably not. So, you know, focus on the meaningful relationships in your life. But you know, need for approval is desire to be liked. You find it hard to ask tough questions of people because you want, you know, you don't want to be seen as a pushy salesperson or offend people or whatever. You know, you're even uncomfortable asking people for introductions and referrals. And when you do get, you know, things don't go your way, you feel like crap. Well, they didn't like me or they didn't treat me well or whatever. So this is like a lot of things in life. It's a pendulum. You know, you have too much desire to be liked, it's going to get in the way of you being effective. If you have no desire to be liked, you probably have zero empathy for other people, and you're going to be one of those brash, arrogant, you know whats that nobody likes to deal with. So it's a bit of a pendulum. There's two sides of that coin, but the vast majority of people have too much of this desire to be liked. One of the symptoms is when you hear what we call fat, phony, happy talk. You know, you see the examples there. Hey, great job, Mike. You know, we'll get back in touch with you. Yeah, what they're really doing is feeding my happy ears, because they're paying me with compliments instead of paying me with business. And I don't know about you, but I'd much rather get paid with business. So when you hear compliments like that, you know, the best practice is to kind of turn it back on a great presentation, Mike. You know what? It was only great because of the information you shared with me and allowed me to really put it together in a way that meant something to you. So you try and, you know, put on your reflector shields or whatever, like Wonder Woman, boom, you know, push those compliments back to the other person, because you really don't want, or ask them, hey, thanks, I appreciate the compliment. How does that help you? Ask them to qualify it. And then then you'll find out whether they meant it just to blow smoke or whether it was real or not. How to overcome this desire to be liked? Friends and family, and lacking all else, get yourself a golden retriever, because they love you unconditionally. And that's a photo of our old golden. He's long since passed, but he used to hang out in my office here. And, we now have grass cutters cutting the yard. They've been here early every Thursday until today. So apologize if you're picking up any background noise. And, you know, overcoming this need for approval, getting it built outside, obviously, but if your gut is telling you there's a reason why they're not going to write business with you, you got to figure out a way to say that. The second thing, take the broker to know. That is, the first time I heard that concept, my head exploded. Like, why would I tell somebody essentially the reasons why they're not going to write business with me before, you know, I've told them all the wonderful things that I do? And, you know, if I'm hearing NO because they don't KNOW enough about me and my company and what great stuff we're going to do. I mean, that was my philosophy for 25 years. And then I learned that, well, when do you want to find out that you're not going to write the business? You want to find out as soon as possible, So the most effective way to do that is to give them permission to tell you that by laying out all the reasons why other people haven't done business with you. And again, it's a pretty bizarre concept, but I got an email from a guy who sat through this class, the selling rate class last week. And in his note, he said, Mike, you know, you taught us this, it was 2008, so it was 12 years ago. He said, that take it to know thing is the most powerful thing that I've learned, and I still use it to this day. So that was kind of reaffirming for me to have somebody talk about it 12 years later. Replace your desire to be liked with a desire to be respected. You know, I believe if people respect you, they'll end up liking you. But a lot of people like you that aren't going to necessarily do business with you. Certainly experience that through life. And the last concept is a precursor. We're going to have examples. I think I got 3 pages of examples. You know, hey, can I ask you a tough question? Or am I able, you know, would you be upset if I asked you a question that might make me upset, or a question that makes me uncomfortable even asking? When you use a precursor, which somebody said, hey, that's where you say something before you curse somebody out. I'm like, okay, if that helps you remember it, that's fine. But it's a way of, you know, sort of setting up a tough question for them. So that's it. And Janice joined us late and then dropped off. So I am going to expand the questions field here, John. I could try and unmute you again. If you have any questions for me, I'm going to stop the recording.